nephew does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sit in the seat of mockers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Everything he does prospers, not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked shall perish. Blessed is the man who does not walk in the counsel of the wicked, or stand in the way of sinners, or sits in the seat of mockers, but his delight is in the law of the Lord, and on his law he meditates day and night. He is like a tree planted by streams of water, which yields its fruit in season, and whose leaf does not wither. Everything he does prospers, not so the wicked. They are like chaff that the wind blows away. Therefore the wicked will not stand in the judgment, nor sinners in the assembly of the righteous. For the Lord watches over the way of the righteous, but the way of the wicked shall perish.
Don't you question, just obey. Groove with us and fade away.
But it's time, I think, now to turn, awaken from the meaning crisis, to the other side of the argument that we need to make. We need to turn now to Not a historical analysis of the genealogy of the meaning crisis, but a cognitive scientific analysis of the machinery, the cognitive machinery of meaning making itself. Jesus starts to emphasize a new kind of love, agape. And this is not the love of consumption or cooperation, this is the love of creation. It's the love that God is demonstrating towards humanity in the way God is an ongoing creation. See, agape is the kind of love that creates persons, the way a parent loves a child. By loving that non-person, you turn it into a person. It's a godlike ability that we have. A person that could enter into a community of persons and find meaning, fellowship, belonging.
In that sense, that's where I see this little corner coming to meet this moment.
Oh, that's a very, I hadn't thought about that.
Because
So just let me make sure I make, sorry for interrupting, I just want to get it. Instead of the we being, it's like, no, this little corner is a nexus point of many different Christian groups and non-Christian groups. And that nexus point is perhaps the place we should look for as the thing that will rise to the response. Is that what I'm hearing you
Yes.
say? That's really good, Paul.
And that's what I hear when you say, this is how this little corner should steal the culture.
Even the sparrow finds a place by your altar. Even the wanderer who roams. Even the fatherless is embraced by the Father. We're coming home, coming home. We're coming home, coming home. Even the sparrow finds a place by your altar. Even the wanderer who roams. Even the fatherless is embraced by the Father. We're coming home. We're coming home. We're coming home. Coming home. The table is set. I will sit down, surrounded by friends and feast. The table is set. We will sit down, surrounded by friends and feast. Even the sparrow finds a place by your altar. Even the wanderer who roams. Even the fatherless is embraced by the Father. We're coming home. We're coming home. We're coming home. Coming home. We're coming home. We're coming home. We're coming home. We're coming home. Coming home. The table is set. We will sit down, surrounded by friends.
All right, there it is. And Nobody came in to ask a question. I guess I'll just have to end the stream. No, not going to end the stream. I just put the link in there. And so if channel members don't have any question, we can see who has questions. Drake just came storming right in. Well, welcome, Drake. How are you?
I'm good. How are you doing?
I'm doing fine. Are you from the same place as Brett?
Where's Brett from?
Florida.
No, I'm from LA, but I live
you're
in
from
Las
LA.
Vegas. Yeah.
Oh, you live in Las Vegas. You have
Yeah.
quite the theological library behind you.
I do. Yeah. Still growing, but it's pretty good.
Are you a pastor?
I am. Yeah.
Your shelf looks like the shelf of a pastor.
Yeah. And I don't mean to show it off, but this is just my office. So you get what you get. But yeah, it is.
I get it. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, because I don't think we've ever spoken.
No, I guess I wouldn't consider myself a long time watcher. I've been watching you for a couple years, so intermediate time watcher. Really love your perspectives, and you've caused me to think a lot about taking theology and applying it to contemporary the moment. So it's been good. But yeah, grew up in LA. Lived kind of all over the United States. When I was 13, we moved to Georgia, lived in Georgia for a while. Was in the Army for a little bit back September 11th. I was hoorah. We got to go fight the bad guys. Did that for a little bit, got out. I wasn't sure what to do after that. Then decided to go try flying, see if flying would be a good occupation. So I went to college in aeronautics and did all that stuff. And then I was going to church the entire time. I wasn't a Christian until I was in my 20s. I guess you can consider myself an atheist before that.
Mm-hmm.
And just wanted to grow in knowledge of the scriptures and theology, and never heard of Reformed theology until 2010. So I was like 5 years after I was saved. Got attached to the Reformed theology and just been doing that ever since. And never planned to get into the ministry until some elders of the church I was a part of thought that I would be a good fit for it. So they're like, but you need to get educated. So I've been doing that for the last few years. RTS, Reformed Theological Seminary, is the seminary I guess I'm technically still in, but went to. And I've been a pastor for 5 years at Trinity Reformed Church in Las Vegas, which is we hold to the three forms of unity. So we're very Dutch Reformed in that regard, but we're non-denominational. So we're kind of a weird niche. So Herman Hoeksma is one of my favorite
Really?
ever. Oh yeah. Hoeksma is the guy. I love him.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know much of the history of that with the CRC?
So not much. So I don't know much of the denominational historical background. I just read his theology.
Okay. He was a big deal. So he had a church in Granville Avenue, and then eventually it was quite close to a house that I lived in when I was living in Grand Rapids. So that history is really tied to the CRC. In fact, my grandmother's sister was married to his son. That's the way the Christian Reformed Church is. It's very like this.
You've said it, a lot.
And,
what do you call it, like the Dutch shoes, or burning the wooden shoes?
Burning the wooden shoes. Yeah. Oh, fascinating. Shoot, I just sort of want to rant to you. Nobody else is here, so that's kind of a good excuse. So you're a solo pastor, you're on staff?
So we hold to the plurality of elders. The other elder is he's more educated than I am. He went to Moody, and then he did his THM, and where did he go? Westminster. And he either got into Harvard but didn't go because it was too expensive, or Princeton, one of the two divinity schools.
Okay.
So he is I would consider him like the of the two of us, the senior one. He's been doing it for 30 years.
Yeah.
And we got so there's two of us, two elders, and we got one deacon. We're pretty small. We got 50 to 75.
Okay.
Including children.
Yeah.
So yeah, we've been doing that together. I've been in Vegas since 2016 because I'm a what is it? What's the word I'm looking for? Bivocational. So I still fly to make my living. So I
Yeah.
fly for United Airlines.
Okay.
And then I call that my part-time job, and of course pastoring is my full-time. But he's paid by the church. The other elders paid fully by the church. So
Okay.
yeah.
What's it like pastoring in Vegas?
Yeah, it's good. It's very transient.
Yeah.
Air Force, you got Nellis, you got Creech. When people move out here, it's either for the military or usually for some kind of hospitality job.
Yep.
And those can come and go like overnight,
Yep.
And Vegas being a tourist location, it's kind of transitioning a little bit. The casinos aren't, like they used to be even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
But you get very unique kinds of people. Yeah.
I would imagine.
And I guess I couldn't compare it to like pastoring in other cities because I was just a layman then.
Right.
And I knew how I was, rebellious, like to do things my way, and it's hard to submit to God's story and not my own.
Yeah.
So
do you own your facility or in a rented facility?
Yeah, so we rent from a Lutheran church, I guess,
okay.
And I can't remember the different divisions of the Lutheran church, but it would be considered the liberal side of that.
Could be ELCA.
ELCA, I think that's what it is. Yeah.
And
we rent from them. We rent their fellowship hall.
Okay.
Which is detached from the sanctuary.
Yeah.
And we've been there for years.
You got to set up and take down every week.
We used to, but we've been there so long. We have a really good relationship with them that we no longer have to do that. Everybody else does. So there's many other churches that meet there, and they do have to do that. But we've even helped them like repaint the interior, and we help them out. So
all right. Well, now we got people in the queue. So we got Mark Parker and we got Grim Grizz. So do you have a question you wanted to ask?
Yeah. I was curious your take on it being Independence Day tomorrow in the US. Your take on the Revolutionary War. It might be a large question. Do you think it was, I mean, there's probably a nuanced answer. Do you think it was good, righteous thing to do? Or is there, was it sinful? Was it, how would you look at it?
Yeah. Is there such a thing as a non-sinful war? War's full of killing.
I don't know.
My perspective on it is certainly the founding fathers weren't the most oppressed people in the history of the world. There are a lot of issues of taxation. I think overall, I mean, obviously sort of the comparison case would be Canada. Would it have been better to stay in the British Empire or to separate? And part of the issue that really sort of forced separation was that the colonists very much wanted to go over to the mountains and settle that Indian country, and the British very much didn't. And the British had just fought a world war, and in America it was called the French and Indian War. And the colonies. One of the things that doesn't get much attention in the history of colonization is that in the end, colonization failed because it was tremendously costly for the colonizing country to maintain. And while they did derive benefits from it, the defense of colonies, the preservation of colonies, the administration of colonies, it was actually a fairly costly thing. And so the British wanted to, have these taxes in order to recoup a lot of those costs, especially from the war. But it's also the case that people don't really like paying taxes. Taxes are not fun to pay because they're sort of things that you spend money on that you are getting benefits from it, but it's not like buying a car. My mother's church, for example, they had to spend $1 million to simply reattach the brick surface on their buildings. And so the pastor had to fundraise $1 million for no appreciable benefit. And if you're a pastor, it's like, that really sucks, because you're going to draw $1 million from your church, and just so that nobody can tell the difference. So I think in the long run, I think the American Revolution was a good thing for the world. I think America has blessed the world in a lot of ways, because it's been this sort of crazy experiment, both politically and religiously. And in the long run, I think it's been a help for the British, especially if you look at it now. So in the long run, yes, but how justifiable was the war in terms of, let's say, how heavy of a hand were the British really putting on the colonists?
Right.
Retrospect, not real heavy. The Brits wanting to recoup taxes, that seems legitimate. But at the same time, I think a lot of good things came out of it. Now, was it good for the Indian population that the American Revolution happened, and then you had the colonists sort of flowing over the mountains, and of course that flow wouldn't end until it got to the Pacific. So it's just like everything in history, it's a mixed bag. But I think there are a lot of good things that have come from America being America, and the cultural distinctions with Canada, I think in some ways are also healthy. America and Canada have a really interesting sibling relationship. And if you want to sort of see if America hadn't revolted, would it have been more like Canada? Maybe, but I think it's probably also true that the American Revolution would have simply been inevitable. There are too many people coming from too many different countries for America to just stay this colony of England in that time period. Later with the British Raj in India, all of these cases are different. And so many of these counterfactual questions are really interesting to play with, but hard to answer. So I don't have any problem celebrating the American independence with a clear conscience, even if you'd have a really hard case to make saying that the colonists were super oppressed by the British.
Right.
It wasn't that heavy a duty on them. So I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's a satisfying answer or not.
No, I think it's I wouldn't categorize it as a good or bad answer. I just was curious what your thoughts were. I know, like, I'm thinking it through the lens of Christian nationalism and this idea that America has somehow covenanted with God, it being established as a Christian nation. And, I look at, there's a lot of problems with that, because I look at even the old covenant, when Israel is a nation actually in covenant with God, and they ask for a king, and God's like, hey, king's going to tax you unfairly. He's going to ask you for your women and children, to go to war. And like, this is the way it's going to be. You can't rebel because they're doing things outside of the law that the law hasn't prescribed.
Yeah.
And, if we're going to say that America's entered into covenant with God somehow, which is distinct from God's covenant with Christ, who is, the nation of Israel, who is Israel, the basis of the war happening from rebellion, which God would seemingly be against, even under oppressive authorities.
Yeah.
Somehow God blessing that and saying, okay, we're in covenant now, everything's good. And now we got to build this Christian nation. I just have been thinking it through that lens, and I celebrate it with the clean conscience as well, because God uses history to bring about the good, and we can't undo what we've done, right? Sin is messy. But yeah, I was just curious so that was a good answer, and I don't want to take up any more of your time with other people on. So,
well, it's a great question, and the whole, it's helpful to remember the whole idea of America as sort of a special chosen people. On one hand, every nation is by definition a little bit egocentric with respect to this, and if you're theists, everyone sort of believes they're God's special child, right? And it makes for good nationalism too. At the same time, it's hard for us to appreciate I mean, for the especially the early settlers like the Pilgrims in Jamestown, I mean, this was like going to the moon for them.
Yeah.
And these peoples that were there were strange, and it's a very different perspective than what we have. And the Dutch had kind of similar ideas when they went to South Africa. It's a very common thing for people to sort of encourage those kinds of ideas as they do a thing. Christian people that do a very strenuous, costly, sacrificial thing are going to think in terms of providence with respect to what they're doing. So
yeah,
not unusual.
Right.
How heavy you want to lean on it? That's another good question.
Yeah,
so,
how thick is that rod that you're leaning on? I don't know.
That's right. Hey, I really appreciate you coming on, Drake, and
Yeah,
introducing
thanks for
yourself.
taking
And
Yeah,
it's
thanks
great
for
to
taking
hear a
my
little bit of
question.
your story. And I think I saw Drake. Drake is part of your name that's in the comment section. So so now at least when you comment again, I'll know who you are, and that's awesome.
Very good. Well,
All right,
thank
thanks,
you, and
Drake.
God bless,
Take care.
and see ya.
Bye-bye. All right, next up, here he is, the uneducated philosopher. How are you, Mark? Up, up, up. Corn, ears.
Oh, sorry.
There we are.
I'm very good, thank you. I was hoping Drake would stay on because I think I look more like a pastor than both of you combined.
Oh, maybe you look more
Or
like,
maybe more like a priest.
I think more like an Orthodox priest, because the beard.
I've got the Orthodox priest going on. I'm trying to convince my wife to make me like a cassock type thing and a massive cross so policemen stop pulling me over. But she's not into
okay
it.
to impersonate an Orthodox priest just so you get that priestly privilege in Tbilisi? Is that a good thing?
I'm not impersonating. I'm just wearing a dress. I'm free to wear a dress and a big fucking cross thing on my chest. I'm not pretending to be a priest. I'm just expressing my masculinity or something like that. I don't know.
In a cassock. All right. Well, I think it's a very masculine outfit. So
my wife is not quite so happy about the idea.
No, I can believe that, her being Georgian. So she probably takes that stuff with a little bit more seriousness than you do. So
she's about as cynical as I am.
Oh.
Let's leave it there.
All right, we'll leave it there. All right. Do you have a question?
I don't. I thought I'd switch it around. Do you have a question for me?
No. Well,
okay.
I usually have questions. I'd have to stop and think a minute. Why do you stay in Tbilisi?
What? Say again?
Why do you stay in Tbilisi?
Well, I'm not actually in Tbilisi at the moment. I'm in my wife's village, which is about an hour's drive away, because Tbilisi gets roasting hot in the summer, and she has a village, and we have a house, and it's beautiful here.
And you have internet in both places.
Internet in Georgia's way better than Ron Copperman's internet.
Really? Wow.
I mean, we're chatting here.
Yeah.
That's
true.
So they went from Soviet Union to we'll just skip those telephone and other steps, and we'll just go straight to the most modern technology. And a lot of poor countries did that.
Yeah.
So the technology actually works better than these greatest countries in the world.
And there's Ron Copperman laughing about his connection. So
love you, Ron.
All right.
All right, next guest.
All right, next guest. Grisswald Grimm, here he comes. All right, there he is.
Oh, I forgot something on the ceiling. Hold on.
Oh, the grift.
Oh, look, it's this beholder here. There's still one available to be unlocked. Nobody has suggested we send it to you. I think it's because you took the puppets off of your background.
Well, they keep distracting my camera. My camera detects faces, And so
Well,
when I have things that
install
look like,
some differentiational AI into it. So have Rick deal with that issue.
I've spent enough on cameras. I don't need to spend more.
I'm
Did you
using-
figure out how to gift memberships in a live stream yet?
No,
Okay.
I see that you have it on deck. That's
Okay.
but
So
I'm not wasting my question on that.
oh, okay. Well, what you do is there's the little when you look over on the live stream thing, there's the thing with the $sign on it,
Okay.
like to buy super stats. So chat. So if you click on there, and the top one is super stickers, then super chat, then membership,
Oh,
and
you
all
do
the way
it
at the
like
bottom.
the way you dono on other people's channels when it's your channel and your stream, there's a gift button member there. Okay.
Yeah, and you get 10 a month to give away for free, which is really nice. After that, you gotta buy everybody else's membership, which I do sometimes. But
Let's see if it works with the shared StreamYard stream version. Press button. Membership gifting. Terms apply. Send 5 now. All right. How about that? Thank you, Paul.
there you go. There you go.
All right. This is a Q&A, and I'm currently making content titled PVK Q&A Drive-By number 47. Because this, back when you used to do Q&As, this is what I would do, except I would do it by putting it in the Bridges of Meaning Discord. Because you weren't bringing people on, you were doing questions from there. And
I was.
It was a series of those and whatnot before you gave me the PVK agency bump and loan of agency and turned me from my evil trolley ways to be the holy fool of the corner. I do have questions.
All right.
If you were a genie, they're real quick and easy ones, except the third one. So here's the first one.
Okay.
Do you think colonization was anti-Christic when it lost to the Viking-type integration that Christianity did in its conquering/colonization? The colonizers failed to give the Indians and whoever they were colonizing the St. Paul Gentile treatment. And that's why those colonization efforts failed, and they revolted to maintain their own identity, because as Christians, you're supposed to weave them into the story of Christ, which is why we don't need. Anyway, what do you think about that?
The Christian value of colonization was mixed. It's true that many, especially Native Americans, once they sort of discovered the gospel, they really embraced it with a lot of passion, because it meant, you should appreciate this, it meant deliverance from the spirits that many of them were terrified of. And Christ gave freedom from the spirits. And that was a huge value to them, because if you look at many Indian cultures, they spent a tremendous amount of energy just trying to placate the spirits, avoid the spirits, deal with the spirits, and Christ comes in and most of the spirits flee. And so, but that doesn't obviously disregard the fact, and you can see this even with Spanish colonization, because the Spaniards, there are some Spaniards that were just, some of those monks were tremendously good to the native populations, and others just wanted to enslave and rape. And so it's almost always this huge mixed bag. And the fact that especially early colonists like in Jamestown and Plymouth, it's a very interesting situation, because
No,
Indians,
I love you, but I still got 2 questions, man. That was a quick, easy one.
That was a quick, easy question?
Yeah.
To evaluate colonization?
Well, just to say it, if they lost, like the way that the Vikings got colonized, had Christ in it and integrated the pagan rituals into, like, matched it with Christic events.
Well, the Vikings were colonizers, and what actually the victims of Vikingization colonized the oppressors, which that's another story too. And I'd say Christianity is actually pretty capable of that, because that's a lot of what Christianity did in the first few centuries.
Speaking of earlier centuries, the second question is, what's your take on the Crusades? And should we bring them back into living memory? That like their cause and whatnot. Is it a good curriculum for our
I'm not an expert on the Crusades. I I was reading a book about them a couple of years ago, which was really helpful to me to show the complexity of it. The Crusades, as with colonizations, is just a huge example of two groups of people terribly misunderstanding each other. And the problem is that they're misunderstanding each other with weapons. And so it's just, people die. I'd say on the whole, the Crusades were a fairly negative thing, but the Crusades did open up the West to a lot of the teaching that was in the East. Aristotle, for example, was rediscovered. And of course, the rediscovery of Aristotle prompted Renaissance, prompted Aquinas, prompted how many things. And so, it's just one of these things in history that was
throw it into the sense it kind of turned out good. It must have been God's plan.
There are some good things and some bad things. So,
all right, the hard question. Did you decide not to bring me as a speaker to the SAC estuary event and deny me being able to honestly add public speaker to my bio out of spite to destroy the self-esteem of the host and therefore summon the general again like the Hulk?
You are on my list of future speakers, Grizz. You are. I wanted David because of the mix of other speakers I was planning. And so when I think about the speakers, I think about the mix. And so when I tap you, so you can say conference speaker, I'm going to have a very interesting mix for you, because I don't know if you know this, but you're kind of a lot. And you scare people and they don't know what to do with you. So I need the kind of speaker that can sort of mix it up with the Hulk. So that's
a climbing Mount Sophia guy who knows a Ken Lowry, that's the same guy, but they're not. Anyway, and then also they know Corey, and they had that was a DC Schindler fella on, wasn't it?
Yeah.
That fella has heard of me. And stated in that video, when you get an invitation, you say yes. So there's an easy ad for the next conference. Good luck with this one, pal.
Thank you, General.
Hello.
Heck of a segue. How are you, Marcus?
I'm not bad. How are you?
Good. I started re-listening to that video, but I listened to it the first time on the plane when I was flying over to Europe and thought that was the difficulty with Daniel is his stuff is so good and so concentrated.
Yes.
He throws out so many really important insights so fast. It's not something like I listen to a lot of video content when I'm doing something else. And I listen to it at regular speed. But with him, it's almost like you have to sit down and actively process just to get some of what's coming through.
Yeah, and that video that you would have seen, that was going to be my first question was, did you watch that video again?
I did.
But
I've watched it one and then a quarter times.
Right. But that was just the second hour of us being together, because I was driving through Virginia and I thought, let me just stop by your place, right? So there was 1 hour that was me and his whole family doing stuff together, talking, having lunch. And they have such a skill or gift or whatever you want to call it for being able to do practical things and get the ball rolling while still having intellectual conversations. As soon as I arrive, I'm in the middle of a field, I see their house, I don't see anybody, but then boom, Daniel opens the door. And immediately it's hello, and then he starts having the conversation. There was no like 15-minute buffer talk awkwardness. They're able to slice right through all of that, right? And he's talking to me, and Michelle's talking to me at the same time about different things, but it works somehow. It works. They're really good at it.
I love those two. I really do. And part of my list is I do want to get out there, and there's so many things I want to do that I just don't have time to do. And one of them would be to do a retreat at their space, similar to what I've done at my sister's space, because they do, they have a wedding venue. So they are in the hospitality industry. So it would be a lot of fun to do something there. So, but it's, you know, and I feel badly because it's a fairly common thing around here that people start channels and their channel doesn't take off the way they'd like it to. And so they get a little frustrated. And then they realize that, you know, if they got a PVK bump, maybe they would, you know, add 10 or 15 new subs. And so then they hope I see it and they hope I comment because that could help them sort of go up. But I can't keep up, especially there's a big proliferation of channels right now. I can't keep up watching everything. And Daniel is, again, his stuff is not just kind of bang, there's the idea, move on with your life. His stuff is like, ooh, I've really got to think about this. And, but it's so concentrated and it's so insightful that, so, and I, you know, like I said, I listened to the first time I listened to that conversation, I downloaded it on my phone so I could hear it on the plane because I've got 10 hours to Europe of sitting in a seat. That's a great time to catch up on videos and to be able to focus on things. And so I thought it was an amazing conversation. There's a ton of really good stuff. But then after I get off the plane, I'm in a whirlwind for 2 weeks. So then you mentioned it again. It's like, oh yeah, I really want to come back to that. And I really want to do some work on it. But
well, it's going to be something that I keep writing about because I want to write about it in an academic context a little bit. That idea of, I misnamed it in the video. It's the social Kuznets curve. That to what degree does income and optionality relate to people's ability to form certain kinds of social relations, right? And my hunch is that in many places we've lost the art of governing, right? And that's the main thing that is starving. People would be willing to lower their income to gain some other kind of relationship or social body that they're a part of, right? But so the money is there in a sense, the resources are there in a sense, all this discussion about Europe versus America and the ability to hold conferences, but what lacks is certain ability to coordinate and certain ability to trust the person that's in charge.
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
So I just wanted to give you a relatively quick question because I listened to the video this morning. Are we all a little bit Protestant? Right. And I realize I don't come on streams a lot because I don't like to, I was trained in an environment where you have to have a really worked out idea before you present it to the public, but I guess I should just give that up. But what I'll just do is I'll offer this distinction that came up in my mind while you were talking about that, which is the distinction between prescriptive and default rules. Okay. So a prescriptive rule is the way that everyone thinks rules work. We've got the rules. Okay. These being the rules means you have to follow those rules. We can observe your behavior against the rule. If you break if you don't follow that rule, you're breaking the rules. Right. And the rules don't function. The rules don't help us unless people are actually following the rules. Right. Not always. Right. That's what prescriptive rules are for. So sometimes that is the way that you should treat rules and understand rules. Right. Driving rules, traffic rules are really
just ask Claire. Claire is all about the rules.
Yes. But then default rules are rules which maybe are just as clear and just as easy to detect deviations from, right? But the reason that they help us coordinate is not because people are always following them, right? Default rules is something like in courts, right? If two people write a contract with each other and something comes up in their actual dealing with each other that the contract doesn't cover. Oh, I thought you owed me this. I thought I owed you, I don't have to pay that for that thing at this time. Right. And you go to court, right? The court is able to put in rules in contracts, right? And say, this is how we're going to judge the situation. Right. And so default rules don't even need to be the best rule, right? They just need to be this sort of blanket, this sort of safety net to save us when our interpersonal negotiations fail, right? So a lot of canon law and a lot of the really, really large institutional churches that know that they can't have prescriptive rules all the way top down to cover all of these cases because they know how strange and how many unexpected things come up at the lower levels, right? The default rules are there as a sort of a way that people can trust, let's say, the discretion of their priest. Right. But know what the worst case scenario is. right? They can opt out, and we know what the worst case scenario is, right? So I think people would benefit from employing, or at least being explicit about default rules more in their life, and especially in church contexts, because people feel that if we have all these rules and we have all this theology and they're really functioning as default rules, right? But they're advertised as prescriptive rules. People feel that they're being swindled, or people feel that now I have a right to challenge my authorities because they're not following these rules exactly prescriptively, right? This whole Ortland Pajot thing is very much related to that, I think, actually. That's not to say, though, that what we think about and what we put in the rules doesn't matter, right? It really, really does matter. Whatever that outside option is, whatever whatever the nature of the moon bounce that you're falling on when you fail to coordinate is very, very important. And it inspires the way that you do act and clarifies the way that you do act when you are just negotiating it on the spot. So that's a distinction I want to offer, and I want to see what you think about it.
Well, I think it's a great distinction, and it's default rules are almost synonymous with a culture, because cultures are made up of masses of usually unexplored, assumed default rules that people may or may not share, which is why pluralism is so tricky and cross-cultural interaction is so tricky, because people will pay a lot of attention to the prescriptive rules because they're articulated and laid out. When I was doing my undergrad in American history, one of the big themes of one of my professors was modernization. And a big piece of modernization, I think partly because of pluralism, I think pluralism sort of provoked a lot of issues in modernization, because, you basically had globalization with Columbus, and the Columbian Exchange provokes this massive time of globalization. Now suddenly what you have are all of these default rules that people assume, can't articulate, don't know what to do. And then now, with the context of pluralism, you're going to take these default rules and you're going to make them observable. And once you make them observable, now you're probably going to have a negotiation process of a subset of those rules to turn them into prescriptive rules, because people come in and they don't know what the rules are. So I look at like a Luke stream. So Luke decided to have these rules, and Luke will enforce those rules. But for many of us, those rules are sort of, behind the scenes, and they're implicit. But and so then you have this desire and this impetus to try to make things as explicit as possible. But the problem with that, of course, is combinatorial explosiveness. You can't make enough explicit. And I think the default rules generally are more caught than taught. And actually, as human beings, we sort of like caught rules better, because once you start dealing with taught rules, you really trigger status hierarchy competitions. Because once you start that game, then the question is, whose prescriptive rules are higher on the hierarchy, who's higher on the hierarchy. And just when it comes to human beings are so sensitive to those hierarchical issues, which is, I think, why a lot of what I've done has been sort of communicating by modeling and example these sort of default rules under the surface, and not highlighting prescriptive rules, because once you make those things explicit and prescriptive, then suddenly you have all sorts of games between human beings of who's in charge and why, and is it justifiable, and why not me, or why not my champion. So I think it's a great distinction, and I think it's really helpful.
I wouldn't conflate default rules and culture, even though they might perform a similar function, right? Because what makes default rules useful is that they are explicit, and is that they are clear, but they're not always followed. So culture, I think maybe what you're using the word culture, social scientists might use the word norms.
So give me an example of a default rule that's explicit. Because my understanding was a default rule can be unarticulated because it's the given.
Okay, I get, by definition, I'll say they are articulated. Default rules are articulated. It's hard for me to think of an example off the top of my dome now, but you can find many examples in these discussions about different canon law things coming up, right? That people will pull a rule from the past, right? Or people will pull a rule from hundreds of years ago that maybe is something that a synod said, right? Or maybe is something that a council said, but either they're saying it for a particular context, or they're saying it to make sure that if people have no way of assessing how to act properly in this situation, they can rely on this and it won't be the worst thing, right? So that people can enter into that situation not knowing whether or not they'll be able to figure out the actual problem and then lean back on that default rule, right? Okay. So like some of the more extreme ones in Orthodoxy that come up is there are certain councils that say Orthodox Christians should never pray with heretics, should never pray with Jews, should never pray with any of these other groups. But that happens all the time. And Orthodox priests today, especially in somewhere like America, will pray with a Protestant or Catholic priest or maybe even a Jew or Muslim, right? And are they in violation of something that the church fathers said? If that was a prescriptive rule, then yes. But since those situations can get very sticky and unclear, right, then holding them to that default rule, if there's ever some uncertainty, is probably a good thing. So it's good that we have it.
Yep.
Right.
But those rules don't have tags. And that's, again, a big part of the conversation between Peugeot and Ortland is that you can go back and you can do the same thing even for a short-lived denomination like the Christian Reformed Church. That once you have a rule of precedent, you've suddenly greatly multiplied rules. But precedent is really important because you don't want everybody just making stuff up on the fly. Yeah. And so precedent is assumed, but you don't have tags between this is prescriptive and this is a default rule. Yeah. And so then you have a council that tries to adjudicate that, but then you've got another council and another council. And so
that's one of the advantages that's pointed to about the English common law system is a case only goes before the court if the people involved in the case claim there's an injury.
Right.
So that's the test for when you actually go back to those rules. And I'll say one last thing, because I'm taking up too much time, is that this is also very much related to the issue of trads trying to resurrect a culture. Right? They say there was a culture back then. There was a culture back then. How do we figure out what it is and bring it to the present? Right?
Yes.
They look at these rules that are supposed to be default rules and treat them as a summary of the culture, because the norms and the default rules are playing a very similar role as opposed to the actual applied instructions. Yep. Right? And so they want to summarize that culture and turn it into prescriptive rules to resurrect the culture today. Yep. It's very similar that you could say the same thing about the Protestant Reformation. Yep. We see the Catholic Church has screwed up all of these different ways of applying the gospel. The Bible is our default rule. The Bible was our default rule the whole time, right? Right. You can think even the Catholic Church uses the Bible as a default rule, but when there's too much tension, when there's too much deviation, then we don't trust the whole thing and we try to go back to the default. So that might be useful.
Well, and it's also why living traditions are important, because to a degree that the living tradition is maintained, again, a la combinatory explosiveness, there are things that are passed along in the other three Ps that you see this with people often ask, what's the difference between the Dutch Reformed and the Presbyterian? It's the living tradition thing, because the Dutch had this tradition of, in certain kinds of things, to look the other way. It's against the rules, but we're looking the other way. And of course, it's like, well, it's against the rules. Why are you looking the other way? No, we do that sometime. Well, when do you do that? Well, we don't really know exactly when we do that, but as a community, we sort of have a feel for it. And then sometimes we look the other way for a while, and then we stop looking the other way. And so with a question, especially about how same-sex marriage has sort of infiltrated churches, because most churches, even the mainline churches, became affirming churches basically by looking the other way. They didn't want to update their formal theology because they knew that was a tough task and they would lose. So they just had a tradition of looking the other way. And then, so
And they have this hope that if anything actually goes wrong with this gay marriage thing, then we'll be able to go to the default in those cases.
Exactly.
But it seems like that actually that basic ability to even refer back to the Bible or refer back to the default breaks down when you have too much cognitive dissonance.
Yep.
Okay.
Excellent. Thank you, Marcus.
Bye.
Bye-bye. Alex, thanks for being patient. We've got Christopher, we've got Alan, we've got Chris Howard, we've got Mark Parker, and we've got Monica. Monica's going to come on the channel. That's exciting. I don't know if Monica's ever come on the screen. I've known Monica for a long time, but not to step on your time. Alex, how are you?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm doing good.
You're back safe and sound. That's good.
So I brought a cold back, which I'll probably give it to my wife. So I always bring, it seems like I brought COVID back once, and now I brought a cold back. So it's not a nice gift.
They do say sharing is caring. So there you go.
I wish I couldn't share it with her, but that's the way it is. So what's on your mind?
Well, you got, this is not your first time you go to Europe, as I gather, and you've been in different cultures, especially when you went on a mission and whatnot. And we also can at least acknowledge, by and large, that there are trends and fads that come and go, and we are also susceptible in some way, shape, or forms to fads and cultures and ideas in the environment, depending on the environment. So, and then with that in mind, since you got to see another culture and maybe you got to hear conversations, when it comes to the current concerns or whether they're optimistic or pessimistic or etc., there are about 1,000 things that I could imagine, but that's just it, because I'm not hearing those people. I can just imagine. But you got a chance to talk to several people. Quick takeaway, is there anything that kind of differs to the American spirit when it comes to concerns regarding the current trends, fads, or what they aspire, whether they're optimistic, pessimistic, etc.?
Yeah. It's really hard because, of course, people have different things, and also the sample of people that I see is very select because of ARC and Breakwater and then the TLC. I think people in Europe a lot of the people that I spoke with in Europe are anxious about their future on a number of levels. There's a sense in Europe that economically, Europe isn't moving forward very well. I listened to a video on the way home of someone analyzing Brexit, and it was very interesting because it was talking about the British situation where people wanted something out of Brexit and they didn't get it. And part of what they wanted was a slowdown of immigration in the UK, and then that didn't happen. And it was like a year ago or two that the UK sort of really clamped down on immigration. But that's not something that you notice very easily. And so even though they did restrict immigration about a year ago pretty significantly, people don't feel it because just the optics are different. And so, but it was interesting because I was in the UK and then I was in Ireland, and I was in the main part of Ireland, not Northern Ireland. And it was interesting because in Britain, they're anxious about the economy. They're anxious about their future. They're anxious about their lost empire. And of course, you would think that Brexit would have been something towards that. But then you go to Southern Ireland and they're anxious because they feel like they don't have enough autonomy and the EU is dictating too much of their situation and they've lost control. So I think there's a sense in Europe that they've lost control of their own countries and their own future. And part of this is sort of directly tied to immigration. But I suspect that a big part of it is they have a storied past of these nations being world colonizing superpowers. And they very much have the sense that in the time of Russia, China, and America, that they're just at the mercy of far more powerful nations than they are. And they don't have a lot of agency, and they don't have a lot of self-determination. And, you know, the idea about the EU was that if they all sort of work together, but at least many of the people that I was with didn't necessarily feel like the EU had their best interest at heart. And so, whereas in America, we do have the sense that, you know, we might have critiques and gripes about how things are going. There's no question that America is a massive, powerful nation. And, you know, even just the current experience of having Europeans come to America and suddenly they're like, holy cow, yeah, it's hot here, but there's air conditioning everywhere. And, you know, we live in a amazingly wealthy, prosperous, awesome country. We really do. And I think a lot of Americans, partly it's their tradition, at least on one side of the aisle, of sort of being self-critical. And there's something really good about being self-critical, because it helps you improve. And part of that's the strength of America. We have a capacity for self-criticism, which helps us. But we live in an amazing country. And a lot of the world wishes they lived here for very real reasons. But that doesn't mean that if you talk to Americans, Americans don't have their list of anxieties and gripes and frustrations and self-doubts. So I don't know if that helps at all.
Well, PVK, you said something interesting. You mentioned as far as, you know, we do have, even though Americans are well-to-do in comparison, that we still criticize. But I think that, now correct me if I'm wrong, because this is my idea, because I've never been to Europe, but it seems like they have been censored to the point where they can't publicly criticize certain things, and people are, whenever they do criticize certain topics on the internet or something, they get, I mean, it's to the point where it's against the law. And the way I see it, because I do have a background in behavioral health, is whenever you have the rule maker, which is the parents, and the kid is not allowed to express their how they think things are unfair, et cetera, things sometimes go sideways in that.
Yeah.
And whenever you actually see it, it's not when the kid is 4 years old. No, it's when the kid actually becomes more powerful and independent, and then that's when things go sideways. So, and that's, I mean, you know, this country in a way was founded on, I mean, we're tomorrow, 250-year birthday of, we had a, you know, it's like the kid saying, okay, you've enough. Anyways, is this maybe, again, my opinion, is this possibly getting blown out of proportion because, you know, people that have platforms, YouTubers, you know, we live in this age, and they need eyeballs, they need attentions, they need conversation, they need something that initiates that. And so there's revenue involved. So I understand that there's a reason why it could be blown out of proportion, but what's your take?
Part of the difficulty of evaluating the other side is the challenge of summation. And part of the difficulty is that right now, so much of our calibration of summation comes through these social media platforms. So the last few times I was in Europe, I would have Europeans coming up to me and they'd be like, I can't, you know, you're so brave to live in America because we understand it's on the verge of civil war. And I'm like, I don't think we're on the verge of civil war. But if you look at YouTube and if you're watching trigonometry in one of these channels, it's like, Britain's on the verge of civil war. And if you go to Britain, it's like, they're like, no, we're not on the verge of civil war. There are concerns about free speech in Europe. And part of what's amazing about America, again, is we do have these strong civil liberties for Americans. A lot of people around the world have criticisms about the fact that we don't necessarily encourage and facilitate the kind of freedom we have in America in other countries, because, you know, we want the other countries to sort of serve our economic imperialist designs on them. But no, and so part of it is distortion, because the truth is, Britain comparatively is a fairly wealthy country in Europe. France is, Holland is, Germany is. Then there are poorer countries in Europe. But I worked with Haitians in the Dominican Republic who are far poorer than Britons. I mean, Haiti is a very poor country. Yet, and civil rights and protected freedoms in places in the developing world are sometimes few and far between. However, also the capacity of the regimes in some of these countries is quite a bit less powerful than it is in some of the larger, wealthier countries. So it's just difficult to make summations about where's it better to live. Because the truth is, I knew many Haitians who they're surrounded by their family and friends. They have their church. Yeah, they're just sort of always on the edge of existence, but it's a very meaningful existence, and they have very fruitful familial relationships, and they can be tremendously happy, even though they're poor. And so, everybody's experience of life is going to be different. And we tend to sort of point at these nation states and think that they are completely determinative of someone's well-being. So that when people say Americans are all wealthy and all Californian lifestyles are like I saw on Baywatch, and of course, there's lots of poor Americans. Would I rather be poor in America or Canada? Well, even that depends, because Canada, would I have better health care? Because that's difficult too, because if you have zero medical insurance in America, you almost have better health care by having no money than being poor at one level and having crap. I mean, it's just so complex. And we see through these media realms and try to think, well, is it better or worse? And everywhere I've been says, my life has been, America's an amazing place to live. And in America, people like California hellscape. California is an amazing place to live. It's an expensive place to live. There are issues with it, but I got back, and right now we've had sort of a cooler summer in Sacramento, and boy, if summer's not like 105, 110 degrees, but like in the 90s and 80s in California and Sacramento, it's a gorgeous place to live. So, but at the same time, I worked with Haitians that lived on this beautiful Caribbean shore on a mountain. I mean, the natural beauty was just stunning. But as one of my missionary friends said, you can't eat the scenery. So and then again, you're also living on borrowed land. And if the plantation owner wants to take away your little garden that you're using to feed your family, I mean, that's the way life is. So these nation states, yeah, but I think these screens tend to focus and derange our perspectives. So
Great.
There's sort of my answer.
All
it's
right.
great to see you, Alex. And thanks for coming on. Christopher's next. Christopher, how are you?
I am doing well. Yeah.
Good. What's on your mind?
On the last members Q&A thing you did, you said something very fascinating to me, which was that something like your parents were sent to take a soup and sandwich operation and turn it into a 3-self church.
Yes.
And that I'm curious to say more about that, because that's a very fascinating phrase to.
Well, a 3-self church was something that came out of sort of the height of the colonial mission period, because one of the things that they discovered was that these churches that usually these colonial powers were founding, and of course the Roman Catholics have been doing that a lot longer than the Protestants. These churches that the Roman Catholic or that the Protestant colonial powers were founding, sometimes they produced what one missionary called rice Christians, which was, as long as there was something to be gained by the presence of the missionary, people would listen to your sermons, they would applaud you, they would be so supportive, they'd come to your services, they'd adopt your religion, they'd do anything that you tell them, as long as there was something in it for them. And part of sort of, especially the Protestant mindset, was this is a volunteerist religion, which means that we don't want you to serve Jesus just because being attached to a colonial missionary puts food on your table. We think that there's something in the Christian life where you would be sacrificially committed to this. And so the three self-church movement grew out of that, where churches should be self-governing, because they noticed very quickly that part of the problem with these mission churches was that the missionaries were always calling the shots. And now the missionaries really liked that because you produced a church that was in conformity to it. But what they also saw was that these churches were dependent on the mission and didn't really indigenize and grow in the population. So they wanted churches that were self-governing. They wanted churches that were self-supporting. And they wanted churches that were, what was the third, self-teaching might be. So people have worked with these things. So basically the idea was you wanted, so the motto was the New Testament. Paul would go into a place, he'd preach the gospel, and he'd leave. And there'd be a very messy process, which you can see in the Pauline letters, by which people are trying to figure out, what does Jesus mean in the first century of the Roman Empire? And the same thing would just re-happen. What does Jesus mean in China at the beginning of the 20th century, or the end of the 19th century, or in the Dominican Republic? Or what does it mean to be a Christian in these places? So first you had sort of these colonial churches get planted by, it sort of connects up with Grizz's question, by these colonial powers. But then the real test was, what happens when those powers leave? What does that church look like? And in almost every case, the national churches or indigenized churches would do some things that the missionaries thought, well, this is wrong. And sometimes this is really wrong. This is against the Bible, or this is against our tradition or the doctrine. But they would have to work it out. And so, I mean, part of, I think, what has happened in the TLC and with my channel was, I had that deeply into me, that when my parents went to Patterson, the goal was not to produce a Christian Reformed church that looked like every other Christian Reformed church in North America. The goal was to create a different kind of church, which is very much what happened. So it was heavily African American, but you had some things from the Dutch tradition, and so they would be different. And this thing happened in 1,000 different ways in 1,000 different places around the world. And so it's very much a missiological effort. And part at the heart of that effort is a certain kind of humility that says, I can do my best to form you, but truth be told, I'm going to have to leave it to the Spirit of God to form Christ in this new community. And it might look quite a bit different from the sending church. And we're going to have to be okay with that. And so that's been basically missionary doctrine, at least in the Protestant tradition, for 100, 150 years.
Ah, interesting. Yeah, that's interesting, because growing up Southern Baptist, you have the cooperative program where we, pull a bunch of resources, whatever, and go out and try to plant, another Baptist church over here and one over here and one over here,
Yeah.
So that.
And then you have, and part of the thing that happens if you're a missionary is you very quickly begin to realize you're always at a disadvantage with the nationals. You'll never speak the language the way they do. You'll never know the culture thoroughly enough the way they do. They finally will be in control of what moves forward in history. So let's dial back on a lot of the control mechanisms, and let's be much more of a facilitator so we can see earlier and with more persuasion just what are they really going to do with this thing that we're giving them. And so that fundamentally changed the way missions went about things.
Yeah. Anyway, yeah, thank you for that answer. Yeah, that's what I wanted to hear more about. Thanks,
Christopher. Take care. Paul Allen is on deck next. Oops, I'm getting some. Oh, okay. That's
You can hear me.
I can hear you. How you doing, Paul?
Doing all right. Yeah. So really great conversations this morning.
Yeah.
This afternoon, I guess. So as you know, people like Jordan Hall are sort of ringing the bell on these these crises which are coming afore. And at the same time, listening to your answer to Alex, and I wrote something very similarly for my bank. We're the place to be right now, and we're doing quite well for a lot of like good, reasonable reasons. Like, we have good institutions, flexible institutions, and anyway, I'm not all right. I should ask questions. So I guess my question would be, where are you at with your concern about the impending cultural crisis? And is it sort of normal? Like, everyone's always concerned about something. So is it sort of at that level, or are we at, or do you think there's reason to be more elevated? And I guess the follow-up question would be, is the TLC and estuary intended, or how do you feel today about it being intended to respond to that, informing people and to respond to that? And how would you verbalize what that formation is?
Our anxiety is like a microphone with automatic gain, in that if you play around with recordings, you very quickly see that on a lot of our devices, our microphones are going to go out and get whatever sound they can find. And so, just the fact that we have these anxiety, we are anxious. We have fear detectors for a reason, because the world is dangerous. And so what you'll find is that people who are high in anxiety, they're always worried about something, and they're always going to find something to worry about. And people who are low in anxiety, like me, they're not worried about things. Neither of these things are a tremendously good judge of what's really going to take you out. And so when I listen to someone like Jordan Hall or Brett Weinstein, yeah, fair enough. I mean, the world is getting more and more dangerous. And Brett Weinstein's anxiety about sharing an atmosphere, that's really real. Nuclear weapons, economic collapse, environmental collapse, just failure of institutions. But the truth is that, and insurance actuarials will actually have a pretty good grasp on this, because they'll tell you that, depending on your age and where you live and how you live, it might just be a car accident or a heart attack that really takes you out. And so, and we do live in a web and a network of really interconnected things. So when my sister died of a heart attack at 53, that really set back two of her children just by virtue of their own issues. And I think you're exactly right that right now in the world, America is the place to be. To me, there's no question about it. Economically, security-wise, even socially, when I look at how the Europeans are having to deal with just what is natural migration from poorer areas of the world to wealthier areas of the world, America can absorb those kinds of things so much more easily. Just the fact that so many of our immigrants come from the non-Islamic world, up from, they're all from the Catholic world. It's like, how good can we keep having it? It's pretty amazing. So, yeah. But at the same time, the history, just look at history. Bad things happen all the time. And we've lived in an amazing, especially if you're an American, we've lived in an amazing period of time. But I was, paying attention to, so I watched a video on the history of Cyprus. That caught my eye because, I spent some time with Harris. And it's like, you see this video and, oh, did you realize that, sort of Greece and Turkey still sort of have a proxy struggle over Cyprus right now? You know how dangerous that is? They're both NATO countries. And in some ways, this is how geopolitics works. The weaker Russia gets, the more dangerous it is to be a Cyprian, because as long as Russia is sort of the big baddie, the Turks aren't going to spend too much of their military on, their ongoing conflict with Greece, because what would be awesome to have if you were Russian? Constantinople. They've wanted that city for like 1,000 years. And, but the Russians, they can't get too comfortable because how much land they took from China, in the middle of the 20th century? Do you know how much China would love to have that back? I mean, you look at other places in the world, and America is the place to be. It really is. And so now, how do I think Estuary and the TLC fits into that vision for me? I was just talking to my wife this morning, and I've been watching sort of this renaissance in the morning in the TLC. You've got Brett and his stream, and B has her new channel, and I look at, Grizz was just on, but I look at where like Grizz is today from where he started, and I look at so many people in the TLC who now have life-giving, stable relationships that are bringing them into, potentially a really cool future.
Yeah, like Olson and I are doing Wednesday night stuff now. And
oh, okay. I didn't even know that. So yes.
Nobody watches, but we have fun.
Yeah. Well, and I told my wife, because I said, I always tell people, do something that would be worth doing even if nobody is watching, because you'll keep doing it. And Chris Howard's next, and he's a great example of that. I mean, Chris was doing his thing in the morning forever before anybody ever saw it. Jeff is doing his C.S. Lewis thing. And I told my wife that part of why this is so gratifying for me is that I have, I can point to how many names, I can talk about the homeless guy because I talk about him a lot and he'll never be on the internet. And I'm not going to mess up there's lots of other names that I could talk about that I can't. But as a local church pastor working with hard cases, I have worked for decades with people that I have poured a lot of blood, sweat, prayer, and tears into, and it's very difficult to see tangible difference for all of my efforts. And what I've seen in the TLC is that I've had a hand in starting something that at this point is quite frankly going on its own. I don't tell people to start channels. I don't tell people to make friends. We've sort of, I see it very, in some ways, analogous to what happens with the early church. I mean, this thing just starts going on its own. And I look at the TLC and it's going on its own. And I don't think it's necessarily a solution to any of these crises that Jordan Hall might see. But sort of piggybacking on my answer to Alex, you might be living in, you look at Tbilisi, Georgia, and I'd love to go to Tbilisi, Georgia, but that's a kind of scary place to live. You've got Iran, you've got Russia, it's a little country. You look at Armenia and Azerbaijan, and you just look at that area of the world, and it's like that whole thing could turn upside down like this. Yet Mark is living there with his wife, and they have this other place that they can go, and he's got his children. People imagine that life is made up of all of these things that we're seeing on the screen, when the truth is, I see people who live in wealthy homes, have all the money in the bank. Look at Johnny Depp and what was her name? Amber Heard. Look at those two. Those two people should be living the best life around. And then what they do is they open a window and you see that their lives are living hells. I mean, she's taken a dump on his bed for revenge. And, it's just crazy. But as a pastor, I'm not saying people take dumps on each other's beds as a common thing, but people with all kinds of money and security live in living hells, and people that live on the razor's edge of existence are living happy, fruitful, fulfilling lives. It's the way life is. And so for me, if I've had a hand in contributing to give And the TLC itself, to give dozens or hundreds or even a few thousand people to make their lives better with the simple thing of friendship. Friendship is such a multiplier because now 2 lives are being made better. And in the course of that, could be that 2 marriages are being strengthened and 2 homes are being solidified. And then they're starting to lean into a church where there's another force multiplier, where these really foundational institutions and values are being reinforced. And to me, it's this slow, steady, basic, the kinds of things. I love this line in Galatians about the fruits of the Spirit, and Paul says of it, against such things there is no law. As bad as this world is, love, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, self-control, even the most tyrannical dictators of the world want that from their lieutenants. And so for me, I'm never going to be, will I be remembered 100 years from now? Doubtful. Will I write a book that will change the world? Doubtful. Will any of my videos, thousands of my videos, really be remembered 2 generations from now? Doubtful. But what am I spending my life on doing? I am helping real people have better lives in a tangible way in a slow growth context. And I think nothing can make me happier than that. So, could a nuke blow it all away? Absolutely. But you know what? It's like, Luther's tree. What do you want to be found doing when the Lord comes again? How about planting a tree? So to me, doing this basic work, I'm a Christian, and I believe one day I'll stand before our Lord and give an account for how I spent my time, attention, talent, treasure. And I'll say, you know what I leaned into? And I'm going to point to a whole bunch of people in my churches and a whole bunch of people in my neighborhoods who never attend my church and a whole bunch of people in the TLC. And I'm going to say, just as Paul said, they are my, you want to see the fruit of my work? They're the fruit of my work. So that's my perspective on it.
And they're the fruit to the extent that they're going out and doing the same thing, not because you say, okay, go out and do this, but because it's then working for them. So yeah, the power of friendship sounds like a platitude, but it's only
live without one.
Yeah, no, living in it is
live without a friendship. Live a life where you have 0 friends. See if you think that's an empty platitude. No, I know you're not arguing for that.
No, it's not a criticism. It's just all right. Thanks. That's a wonderful answer. Thanks, Paul.
Yeah, that's what I think. Thank you, Paul. And in comes Chris.
Hello.
Hey, Chris.
How are you?
How are you? Good.
I'm all right.
And I do want to say, I know I can't give all the as much attention as they deserve, but what you've been doing in the morning and the faithfulness that you've done it with, to me, is just tremendously praiseworthy. And I think I think the world of what you're doing, and so just keep it up.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm amazed with these people now that are on before I'm on. There's this whole stack of people now. I don't get up that early.
Especially not in California. I'm up pretty early for California, but
yeah. So I wanted to know if you ever ran into Baby Doc while you were in Haiti, and if you have any ideas about where Cuba is going. We've got a Secretary of State now who's really interested in Cuba. Yeah. Is there some way of having like a nice landing for a place like that in the post-dictatorship world?
Yeah.
So did you ever shake hands with Baby Doc?
Baby Doc was gone by the time I got to the DR.
Oh, okay.
So Haiti was in the midst of its travails of what passes for democracy in much of the Caribbean. So the same goes for the Dominican Republic. And part of the difficulty, and this, applies to Cuba as well, part of the difficulty of these tiny little countries is that, you know, there's corruption in America. There's no question about it. But you go down to these little countries and you begin to see what corruption really costs and what it looks like and what it costs people. In some ways, some of these countries in the Caribbean, during the when the French gave up Quebec, the French gave up Canada because, which island was it? Dominica in the Caribbean, because that little tiny Caribbean island with sugarcane produced more wealth for France than all of French Canada. And so they gave away Quebec. The Caribbean could be a paradise. And it's not. And the reason it's not is because of human beings. And you can point at the colonial period, you can point at what the European powers did to those nations, but you can't let any generation off the hook for what they've done to themselves. And it's both true. And so Cuba, of course, was sort of an American playground. These nations in the Caribbean, you know, if you think Canada has a problem with America just because it's a mouse in bed with an elephant, well, these Caribbean nations are like fleas compared to Canada. And they're so dependent on the US economy. And so for all of these nations, they have to figure out how to not just become fodder for our massive superpower, and yet how to take advantage of it. And during the Cold War, super savvy move to ally with Russia, the Soviet Union, you know, but, you know, there's no money in that for Russia anymore, really. And so Cuba's got to figure out how to do this. Now, at the same time, it's going to be interesting because you've got this whole population of Cuban Americans who have been picking up a lot of American cultural DNA. And it's a really interesting question that if a lot of these people go back to Cuba, could they make Cuba a far better place to live? But part of the difficulty in these countries has been that you have this tiny film of elites in these countries that just bleed the country dry. And there's this film of elites have all of their property there. It's sort of like the colonial powers left and locals figured out the colonial game and are still just sucking the marrow out of these countries. And that's why a place like Venezuela tends to be, you know, oh, let's try communism. Yeah, it doesn't work real well either. So it's really hard to know, but Cuba will change again. And hopefully it could be a really wonderful place to live. The climate's beautiful. The situation's beautiful. They've got year-round growing season. They've got fertile areas. They've got natural resources. Could be an amazing place to live. But then Cuba has exactly the problem of, let's say, another island like England, where, let's say, 1 million Americans decide to relocate to Cuba. And we bring all of our money. And, you know, because the truth is that once, if Cuba sort of opened up and a whole bunch of people sort of empty Miami and go back to Cuba, you better know that everybody in Cuba knows who was here during the regime and who's coming in now.
Oh, yeah.
You know, just like in Rwanda, those kind of distinctions. So that's just human nature. And so,
oh, that's true in Mississippi too. The ones that left and went north and the ones that stayed. Yeah.
Yep.
That's the thing.
So who knows, but could be great. Could be terrible. That's life in this world.
Okay. It's nice to see you again.
Great to see you, Chris. All right. Mark D. Parker. With all the patience. How are you doing, Mark? How's it going with your mom's death? And is that sort of resolved yet? Or have you had a service yet? Or
Oh yeah. We had a really nice service that went off to without a hitch. And 2 days later, my aunt, her sister-in-law, one of her closest sister-in-laws died then. And then a few days ago, my daughter was taken to the hospital because she couldn't move. out of bed. So we're hitting the ground running.
Was it
around here?
Physical or psychiatric?
It's back. No, it's back. It's
back pain. Oh.
Major back issue, just completely debilitating. She inherited my back, and unfortunately, she may have gotten it even worse than I do. If you do an MRI, or they did an MRI on her back, and they looked at it and said, "This is horrible." And she said, "Well, describe it." And it's like, oh, so it's like my dad's back. So it's like bone spurs growing out of the spine and creating these small little pinches of tiny. So
how old is your daughter?
She's still in her 20s. She's 27, I think. So she's really young.
Oh man.
But praise God, she's actually up and walking for the first time in about 4 or 5 days.
Okay.
4 days. So they actually got her up. She's still in the hospital. But I think while I was listening to you for part of this, I was working on a grab bar in her shower and trying to figure out how to make things safer. So it's a fun time.
Yeah, you were caring for your mother. Now you're caring for.
I forgot the termites. We discovered termites, and we were getting ready to make it into a little holiday for the whole family. So I got an Airbnb before my daughter ended up in the hospital. Got an Airbnb reserved up in the mountains, and we're just going to tent the place and bring everybody in and just have a time of it. And it's like those plans. That's Jesus talks about making plans and storing up for this or that and being a fool, resting on your laurels.
Yep. It's true. It's true.
Don't do it.
No, that's how, a lot of questions about how the world is. That's how this world is. You can't.
Yeah.
And what's amazing is that we, you and I both live in California. It's a great place to live. Redlands is a gorgeous place. Redlands is, you've got even better weather.
I've been shopping real estate everywhere for alternatives to retire, and it's really hard to find a better place than where I'm at.
Yeah. And yet, we live these amazing lives, the likes of which the vast majority of human beings, we look like we're living in heaven compared to many places throughout the history of the world. And yet, don't heap up your treasures here on earth, because where moth and rust consume, because everything in the age of decay, it can be taken from you.
Oh, yeah. In an instant.
Yeah. And even your young daughter, she's not even 30, and, back issues and no fault of her own, she inherited it from you. And
that's 99% of it's all me. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's just bad genes and unlucky, whatever you want to call it. If there's not luck, then it's just, but it's, this is one of the things that I got in trouble with the boys in one of the chats, was that I said there's, all of our suffering is based on memory or projection into the future. It's whatever it's what we hope for and what we look back to. That's where all of our suffering resides, because perfection, eternity, in a sense, it resides right now. And if I can and that's kind of a Buddhist thing. If you concentrate your mind very profoundly, just very deeply, just stay right on the now. Right now, you can be in complete bliss, because right now is really, this is what life is. But yet you can't, because of the nature of nature of our consciousness, I guess, is that it's all based upon reflection or projection.
Yeah.
It's imagination. It's imagination forward and backward.
Yeah.
And we suffer because of it.
Yeah.
Or we have pleasure because of it.
Yeah. Or we survive because of it. Because
But the very best place to be is right now, because you're alive. Yeah. You're actually here to be aware and experience life.
Yeah.
But as long as I'm going forward or with my mind or backward with my mind, I'm living a fiction of pleasure and pain that just is torture.
Yeah.
So even for my daughter, the fact that she's alive to suffer, to endure whatever she has to endure, is a kind of bliss, if you can get there.
Yeah.
If you can have it.
Yeah.
And that's which is, that's an incredible, that's the life challenge. That's a challenge of the mystics. And of all the great traditions.
And it's, you know, the counting your blessings thing. She has a father and mother who, you know, are there for her, and there's a medical regime, and there's, I mean, and so, you know, that's part of what living in the developing world will teach you, is because you see situations sometimes, even America too, you see situations, you just think, oh, Lord have mercy, this poor person.
Well, to be alone in any of these circumstances, right? I mean, that's you know, trying to figure out what I'm going to do. I've got all these skill sets I developed through caring for my mom, and I'm like looking at it, and I'm struggling with, once we're through everything, I don't know when, but I'm thinking, you know, that probably would be a good place to invest myself as professionally, at a professional level, in caregiving, or if not caregiving, then having estuary support groups, estuaries for families going through it, and so on, and for caregivers and so on. So, I mean, because there are a lot of people who go through these things with nothing or very little. They don't have the money, so somebody gives up work, and then they have to move out of the house they own and live in a smaller apartment because they aren't bringing in the money they need to support the house they used to have, to care for the loved one who had no money of their own, and for whatever circumstances. So you were talking about the top earlier, talking about corruption in the top film, you know, the top layer. Well, there's that bottom layer in the United States too, who live on a tiny, tiny percent, tiny little bit. They share this, you know, little bit amount of the economy, and they just scrape by month to month, and they don't have the resources to. I mean, my mom's care was 10 grand a month, basically, to manage, to take care of my mom, and it was, praise God, we had it. And we went on, and we could have gone on longer, and she literally died of the disease. I mean, that was what's on the death certificate. She died of the neurocognitive disorder. And Alzheimer's. And so her brain simply forgot how to run her system, her autonomic breathing and heart and everything else. And that can go on for 12 years. We went on for, since the diagnosis, we went on for about 6, 7. And we had symptoms for 10, but it could have gone much longer. And I can't imagine people just get bled dry by a system that is impersonal. And the thing is we pay people very little to do this work. And a lot of families don't want to deal with it. And a lot of people don't want to deal with the subject at all. Until they're forced into it.
And can you blame them? It's not fun. It's hard.
Denial, though, because it's like, the fact is if you make it to 80, it's a coin flip whether or not you'll develop dementia. That's the statistical truth of it. 50-50 chance you'll get dementia. And if you live to 60, you'll probably make it to 80. So anyway, my question for you, Paul, if you have a minute.
Sure.
Well, you and Marcus were going on about, you know, rules, and I kept feeling like Marcus, being an economist, God bless him, he's always thinking transactionally, and it seemed like that was the fallback. And you've made yourself the argument about church just works, or religion just works. I think you've used that exact phrase. It just works, which is a transactional utilitarian sort of argument for participation. For me, it's, you know, one, I'm not sure it just works even was the Apostle Paul's argument, since he said, well, Jesus said, if you follow me, don't expect to get treated any better than I got treated, and look at how I got treated. That's your fate.
I don't want you to miss this, Mark.
Oh, what does it say?
It's digital gnosis. Hopefully it's him, but it's good to.
Oh, it probably is.
It's good to see him. But keep going.
I've in fact, I got a reply to something to him, so I got to get back to you. Digital. anyway, and Paul, the Apostle Paul's point was that so Jesus said what he said, then the apostle says, if there's no resurrection, we're fools. We're to be pitied.
Yep.
Because we're sacrificing to follow Christ. We're not getting any benefit from it if we're really following him. So my question to you is, and this is what I'm chasing after. I keep chasing after it. And I'm actually an example of one of the corner people who's no better off since joining the corner. No, I'm not blaming you, but I've got no material benefit from participating in this scene.
No, you might not have had much material benefit, but my guess is
you're going to make that utilitarian argument.
I would argue that I don't know. I think you really enjoy the friendships that you've made.
Of course
here.
I do. Of course it. But here's my question too, and this goes out to everybody in the corner who calls himself my friend, my frenemies. Is I watched my mom with her later in life at the funeral. It's a really interesting thing. You get to. It's a wonderful place to be very briefly around that period, around a death and a funeral, because you get perspectives on things that you don't normally see. Yeah. And she developed a network of friends after my dad died. And that was over a course of 25 years or so. And she thought they were the best friends in the world, and none of them showed up. And some of them I know are able-bodied and could have, but none of them showed up. None of them reached out to me and responded other than a text back when I texted them or called them or something. Wow. Which makes me think of these friendships, and friendships. I think about the friendships. I talk to people very deeply at the Chino estuary, but I can't really, in all honesty, call them friends. Yeah. In a way that it's going to help me put a grab bar in a shower, yeah, or in a crisis, maybe in a deep personal caregiving way that you pay somebody $20 an hour for it at a caregiving facility to help me take a shower if I'm going senile. I mean, and to me, Christian friendship is I'm chasing after that, and I don't know. It's something like family at its best, because we have that in my family. I mean, we've proven it.
Yeah.
And I just want to see it if I can. I don't know if it's even possible to make it grow outside of that, but yeah, occasionally it happens. And we actually saw some of that, believe it or not, in the AIDS crisis. There are lots of testimonials of people in the gay community during the 80s and early 90s, before the meds came through, where they had that kind of deep, they're wiping each other's, dealing with everything, and people dying in each other's arms to the end when family had rejected them. So it is possible between humans.
Yeah.
But is it possible in a Christian community?
Well, I've seen it in a Christian community. I've seen it's a complex. Rare. I don't know if it's rare. There's a lot to this. Luke sent me a video that he caught from someone else who basically was making the argument that one of the things that has been lost in the modern world is the tradition of friendship. They can go see all the way going back to Aristotle. One of the examples that he used was Thomas Carlyle, and it was, I forget who, Thomas Carlyle and another person. They met once in person, and for the next 30 years, they wrote these amazing letters to each other, and they spoke. Part of the argument you hear sometimes is when you hear David talk about Jonathan, people think, well, maybe they were gay. But if the argument of this video that Luke had sent me was, throughout history, you can find many examples of men talking to each other and expressing, care, concern. Today, we pull back from it because we're concerned that people will misunderstand, and we think that there's somehow a sexual element to this friendship, which sort of recategorizes things. So it was a helpful video. I've seen many communities where Oh, I've seen it often. I remember when we were putting the fence around Living Stones, there was a guy who was living in Reno. You know, he was in the corner every now and then. He came down 3 Saturdays to help us with that darn fence. And, you know, I haven't seen him since. But there's a lot to this. And you're right to hold back and say, okay, yeah, how deep are these friendships? And that's a really hard question. I can think about a friend of mine who we were roommates in college and then in seminary, and we stood up for each other in each other's weddings, and you know, our families played together. But then part of the difficulty is he lives on another area of the country, and we just, by virtue of a whole bunch of things, we don't connect like we used to anymore. And so, but I guess what I see is, you know, we can certainly talk about the degree and the level of the word. But one of the things I'd spoken over dinner at ARC with a guy who's a cleric at Cambridge, and we began talking about this issue because I think about my father's life. Lots of people showed up to my father's funeral. But to what degree, when I think about who were his friends besides his wife, and that's a piece of this too, because we've changed the spousal roles so that if you don't in this culture say, my wife is my best friend, then somehow you've cast something over your marriage, and you've made it vulnerable in some weird way. And that wasn't true in the past. A wife was a different category than a friend. Mm-hmm. And so it's super difficult. Yet
the wife was for better or worse. That was it. Right. I mean, that's right. And whatever shape that took, that was secondary to the for better or worse.
Yeah. So, I you know, your pushback is well taken. But at the same time, I don't think we would see the number of people, and it's not a huge number, but when I look at these early morning shows and I see Scott and Olson and Brett and B and Grizz and Chad together, spending time, you know, we're folding clothes with Olson. And I think, I don't know what to call it necessarily. If we're going to, you know, preserve friendship for a really high standard, acquaintance. I don't know that it's an acquaintance, but people are sharing life to the degree. Chad's up next. And when I see Chad turn on a live stream and he's just strumming his guitar, and he's probably home because he's got this little baby girl, and little baby girls take naps, and, you know, raising a little child, it can be mind numbing because you sit there all day and they're putting the things in and out, and they're doing these things. And on one hand, they're cute, but there's only so many hours of cuteness. And it's like the gray matter's dying here. And so to have the internet and to be able to kind of open things up, and these are people that you share some things with and you respect. And so who knows, maybe we don't have the language for the kinds of relationships we're actually developing, and we don't actually know how deep they'll all go or what they mean, but they're not nothing. And, you know, Mark, it's, you know, even though, you know, we've spent time together in my sister's place and you came up for our work day, and, you know, we've been in Estuary together, and I respect you.
How much do we really know?
How much do we really know? I haven't been to your house. You haven't been to my house. I've met your wife. You haven't met my wife. You know, but at the same time, I'd say what we have together, it's not nothing. What is it?
Right.
But it's valuable. And I certainly am grateful to have it. And I would guess that Estuary and your channel and everything that you've done, I don't think you would keep doing it if you weren't getting something from it. And I don't want to, you know, you're right to push back on the utilitarian thing. And that's an argument I make to utilitarian Americans that
I suppose I'm looking for the principle upon which I'm looking for a principled argument to support the cases you guys were talking about, you and Marcus were, what's the principle as opposed to the transactional or the utilitarian? I mean, and uh-oh, I've got to go. I'll see you later.
All right, Mark.
Bye.
Bye-bye. All right, Chad, you're up.
That was really good. It was really good to hear Mark. Sorry for your loss, Mark.
I'm sorry for your daughter. I mean, it's one thing to have your mother who's been suffering, and at some point death is sort of a relief. But then when you have a 20-year-old who's got those back issues and you realize they inherited it from you, I know that's a weight. So
Yeah. The question that you brought up is interesting, and about the friendship, about all the people over the 25 years that she proclaimed that were her friends, and none of them showed up.
yeah.
That's man, that is so at the center of kind of this thing that I can't seem to nail down propositionally or like name. And it's profound to me, because I think it's like it's the thing that we can't see. There's something, when we talked about things under the waterline, there's some bad stuff under the waterline that we don't know too. And that to me seems to be kind of like there's some weird stuff down there that I don't know, but it seems to be pretty vital. And in one sense, you could say, well, I mean, she said that they were her friends and she enjoyed their friendship while she was alive.
Yeah.
And that generation has gotten some interesting things going on with their ability or inability or willingness or unwillingness to mourn. So there's something there. I think that for some reason, something coming to mind, if people have this desire to kind of contribute to some sort of spiritual revival, and I don't care what, uh, I don't care if it's the revival of the common religion. I don't care. I say start at the funerals. That's probably where it's going to be. It'll be like something like start with the kids and start with your funerals, something like that.
Yeah.
And just show up. Everything takes intentionality.
Yeah.
And it's really hard,
Yeah. That was Douthat's point in his ARC talk, that going forward, what's going to last will be chosen intentionally. If you're going to have a child, you're going to have to, it's not going to be just an accident because, gosh, you saw and you were horny and you did it. And then, oops, I guess now, well, maybe. Now it's going to have to be intentional, and it's going to have to be, it's going to take effort and sacrifice. And so the future belongs to those people with a plan and are willing to sacrifice for it.
Yeah, all the way down.
Yeah,
all the way down. You could call it, I don't care what you call it, utilitarian or not. I don't give a shit.
Yeah.
Just like get on with the living.
Yeah.
So yeah, I don't know. Like there was so much I wanted to ask, but at the end of the day, what's come to mind is, maybe it's a cheeky question, I don't know, but like how has this what has unfolded over the last several years, how has it not only impacted you, if you're willing to say it? I know this is a personal question, but how has it impacted or, let's say, transformed you, whether at the level of Paul and the underwater or the waterline, or let's say even your relationship or understanding of Christ and that whole thing? I'd be really curious to know that. Like,
yeah. I actually think about aspects of this. Some of the things that have formed me most in terms of my relationship with Christ were really hard things where I was tempted to be unfaithful. I was tempted to be selfish. I was tempted to break vows and break bonds. And, I had to look to Christ for the strength to not be selfish, to not break bonds, to not, hit back, to not do what would be natural. And those were some points in my life where Christ was most real and most present and most close, because I was I needed Christ with me, or all kinds of chaos would have, I would have done things that years later I would have deeply regretted, because it would have cost plenty of other people a lot. And so this for me has been deeply gratifying, in that I've been a dramatically unsuccessful person. My churches haven't grown. In fact, the church has shrunk. I just, and in terms of those kinds of metrics of success, I was appreciated, I was loved, I was valued by people, by a small circle of people. But, like I said, when I was talking to Paul, just talking to my wife about this morning, I was, my wife, I'm still a little jet laggy, so I wake up super early, and then I do some things. I get to catch some of the earlier morning shows, and then I was chatting with one of my Signal groups, and Luke is in that group. Luke's in both of my Signal groups, and Luke was talking about, wow, we're making so much stuff in the morning shows that Luke, who watches a lot of TLC stuff, he's like, well, I only watches TLC. It's like, I can't even keep up with it. And so then my wife woke up and she's like, oh, what you doing? I said, I'm just chatting with my Signal group. And I said, I spent years working with people that I was really hard pressed to see any fruit of what I put into them. I know there's fruit there. They certainly appreciated me, and they could express appreciation to the degree that they were capable of a stable thought. And you have ideas about that. But when I just came back from Europe too, and there are relationships, whatever you want to call them, there are relationships between people that people seem to really value. And I see growth in people. I see growth in you. When you first got here, you were kind of all over the map, and you'd get angry with something and cuss everyone out, and that's fine. It didn't bother me at all. But you're an elder in this space, Chad. You are deeply respected and appreciated and loved and listened to. You really are. And when I look at, your fingerprints are all over this space. I mean, Grim Grizz's branding, and every time I look at you, you're doing something new and creative that all of us benefit from. You open it up and you're strumming your guitar, and you've got this other idea, and it's like you are, in some ways we are also a product of you, and you've blessed people tremendously. And I think that is just so awesome. You've got your sobriety, you've got your wife, you've got a beautiful little daughter, you've got a trade, and now you have, you're a really important part of this kind of insane network. And when you show up on a live stream, people are happy to see you, and they want to hear what you have to say. And I know inside your head, I'm sure you have a degree of imposter syndrome when you think, oh, but if they knew, blah, 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 blah. And okay, fair enough. But the truth is, you've poured a ton into this space, and there are fruits from it. And so when I look at you and what you do, maybe it's selfish of me, I take a little bit of credit for it. And I think, you know what? I might have had a little hand in helping a bunch of homeless people maybe have a little better existence than many of them are in their grave. But you've got that too, of course, with your AA work. But
you helped this homeless person find some home.
So we all in this space make our contribution. And, so B started a channel, and because Luke is such a good watcher of everything, when there's something happening, he usually points me to it, which is really helpful because I can't keep track of everything. And then, B started her channel, and she starts off with this poem, and this poem is just an amazing poem that she begins with. And she's not our typical rando here. She's a younger woman who has found her place in this space. And I see what's happening here. And I just think it's beautiful. It's just beautiful. And that's to me just deeply gratifying. And I can say, almost nobody in my real life, I talked to my wife about this a little bit, but she's not going to watch any of it. My kids don't watch any of it. And, almost nobody in church watches any of it. Chemo will watch this. Dog barks dead. But Chemo will watch this. And I just think, gosh, man, I feel so blessed. And, I know who knows where I'll die or when I'll die. And I wouldn't hold it against any of you if, trying to get to my funeral was inconvenient. But I wouldn't be surprised if some randos show up and my wife is going to be like, who are you? And then it might be only because, we did 2 services for my father. We did one in Whitensville where he died, and we did another one in Patterson where he spent a lot of years, obviously. And I remember I expected a good crowd in Patterson because he poured 36 years there and, helped a lot of people. But Whitensville, there were like 800 people lining up at calling hours just to say to the family, your dad really helped me, and your dad was important to me. And obviously, as a griever, that's huge. But I didn't see a lot of what he did, and I'm sure there are many more who never made the service. So I look at what's happening here, and I just read the comments. Look at what our own Biblio Bison is doing in the comments section. And this started off almost right away because I was expecting the comment section to be a cesspool. And very quickly, Mary Cohen was in there and Julian was in there. And then I'm talking to Mary, and Julian's like, oh, that's the smart lady from the comments section. And then Mary starts doing things, and I just look at it and I just think, I just praise God, and I feel deeply grateful and blessed for all of you. And Chad, you're a really, really big person in that mixture because you have an outsized influence on this corner and making it what it is.
Well, okay, so Paul, if you kick the bucket like in the next week or tomorrow or next year or whatever it is, what we'll do is we'll probably do like a greater regional ingression funeral time, which is like estuary/funeral, and we'll do it at campgrounds, and we'll get Skank to run it. It'll be the grift of all grifts, greater regional ingression funeral time. And then we'll send all the money to Livingstone so they could actually maybe survive somehow. So that you heard it here first. That's probably what will end up happening. But it's something that's just come to mind today, real quick, and then I'll get out of your hair. But the idea of
I don't have any hair, Chad.
Well, I get out of your beard. I'm like a gnat in your beard. There's like the spirit of friendship. Maybe it doesn't have to even just be friendship. Maybe it's just the spirit of friendship that we try to continue to the bell that we could try to ring is the spirit of friendship. There's some really wise dudes out there who will say, if I'm doing my job right as a man of God, you'll never even know if I don't like you. And that to me is the spirit of friendship. And that can actually heal, you know. So I don't know, that's an interesting idea, the spirit of friendship versus trying to be a friend. You know, what kind of friend am I going to be anyways? Are you kidding me? I'm a jackass, but maybe I could try to contribute to the spirit of friendship. So I love you, Paul. Have a
I
great
love you,
day.
Chad.
Pray for, if anybody out there wants to send some prayers out for Anne and her family as they're
Yeah, she
still
just
going through
she just
that.
lost her father.
Yeah, and June 7th, he died, and but you know it's he's like the guy. He is like the best of men in her mind. I can only hope that my daughter will see me in the similar light. But it's hard, and it's hard being a husband and not knowing how to help or deal with this. I'm like I didn't mourn long for him. I mean, I feel like he was great. I mean, we had like 5 years of waiting for this to happen, but he was the greatest, the closest thing to that she would ever probably experience, maybe next to her daughter, and as an otherworldly being, right?
Yeah.
And so, and she won't admit that it was that deep, but it was that deep. And how, as a husband who is who's selfish and self-centered, I don't know how to deal with it. I don't know how to be there. I always want to try and fix things, and I don't know how to fix shit. And she doesn't want me to fix anything, and I can't help but try to fix and all this stuff. You know what I mean? It's like, so maybe that's what the TLC is, really. It's just a place where we could try to really try to ring the bell of the spirit of friendship, because maybe somebody says something that's useful that I can be like, oh, maybe I'll try that or something. Whether it's Claire Caw or Neil Dalis or Grim Grizz or whatever, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
All right, I'm out of here.
All right, Chad. Great talking to you. And last but not least, thanks for all your patience. You've been in the back channel for a long time.
Hello, Paul.
How are you?
Not too bad. Been lurking for a while.
Yeah, tell me a little bit about yourself.
I'm pretty much I pretty much found your channel during the peak of Jordan Peterson.
Okay.
Well, the very beginning, I would say, when you were much smaller, and that was before your interview with Jordan Peterson, and then obviously one thing leading to another. I read Matthew Pageau's book, and for some reason just stumbled upon an old calendarist Orthodox church, and here I am.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, congratulations.
I was trying to get the Anglicans to convince me to become Christian. They didn't do the job well.
Oh.
But, I kind of figure out why. It's very funny. It's the interesting part is that one of our priests actually came from the exact same Anglican church from 50 years ago.
Oh, wow.
So it's like you can see the kind of progression in everyone's spiritual life. And hey, you know what? That's a funny thing, because everyone can give you an answer on, hey, this is the reason why something didn't happen in your soul, for example.
Yes.
But the reason why I want to call, though, is I kind of want to ask you, have you either read Rod Dreher's How Dante, what's the book again? How Dante Can Save My Life, or have you talked to him about that experience in his life?
I have not. I've not read the book, and I've not talked to him about that experience.
Because, I mean, you probably already know which experience I was talking about.
No, I don't.
Oh, he was extremely sick. He had this autoimmune disease that basically immobilized him for quite a while.
I didn't know that.
early 2000s, something like that, when he has to move back to his hometown, and all the tough relationship with his father, all of that as well. Didn't help as much, and his testament is really that he found this spiritual healing from reading through Dante, and then the big epiphanic moment is that he realized that, well, he was a Christian. He was brought up as a Christian, of course, but then he was kind of, I don't know if it's good to say that he has fallen out a tiny bit, but that's probably what happened. And then he realized that when he said he believes in God, he meant that he really wants God to be true. He really wants this to be the truth, rather than that he actually believes that this is the truth. Well, to a certain degree, that's the kind of utilitarian part of it. So
yeah.
I do think that he's a prime example on why utilitarianism probably wouldn't go too far, and that was a very, how do I say it, hard-hitting, story, really, because I was kind of in the same place. I read Matthew's book. I was thinking, wow, this is much, much deeper than my tradition, at least, and I can almost pinpoint on why things kind of went south from where I came from, based on this, because how shallow things can be in, when you're just thinking of like the yins and yangs, and it's almost like when you compare these symbolisms, you see a more, you see a mirror version of that in alchemy a lot of times. So you can see that, henceforth Christianity is on top of that, at least. That was my experience so far, and and here's the reason why I wanted calling, because I really wondered if we have visited a old calendarist Orthodox church, because I can imagine this, because, well, of course you're in a very tough position to hop to another church, let's go that way. But hey, my general feeling is I didn't come to my own church through research. I just literally stumbled upon it. So I'm very happy that it's an old calendarist, very, very traditional. And I know how it is, but when, like, for example, now when I'm looking at all for example, the mainline Greek Orthodox Church, and I see all the pews and I see all the women and men sitting together, I'm thinking, wow, this is more or less like a community center. Not that it's not important to have a community, but that church is something probably higher than that. I get it. It's, to be honest with you, I think if it's not important to have a community, then then that potentially means God is not graceful towards those who are not Christian. I'm never going to make that argument, of course. But at the same time, I think, well, this conversation, all the TLC stuff is very, very far from my daily conversations with my church fellows, because you can imagine it's you probably already know what it is since you've been to one, and even though it's new calendars, you still get the touch of it. But what I'm getting at is, there are reasons why I've seen a lot of Orthodox fellows still who are still hanging around in this community, and that's for a reason. I think that reason is this openness. So it's definitely, like, I absolutely appreciate that ground. I mean, I can say that you helped me making sense of a lot of things that Jordan Peterson talked about at the early stage when I was younger. So I'm pretty sure a lot of people appreciate you for that as well. I'm not the only one. But on top of that, it does feel like, if we're just talking about, okay, community is the only thing, then okay, we are all it feels like everyone will be able to, how do I put it, will be able to chant their own version of Ecclesiastes. Everyone will be in this environment telling you that vanity and vanity always vanity. And for all of us who are Hamlets in our heart, we can find Horatio. But then very soon we will see the Rosencrantz and Guildensterns popping around, and it's not going to be the most sustaining thing. And there are reasons why Antichrist will, eventually come from the church, right? So So I do believe that since I think that at least my experience made sense of what truth is for me, and why truth has to be one person, which is you've probably heard of people talking about Father Seraphim Rose, who is
Talking
now
about what?
Father Seraphim Rose.
Yes,
It's now Saint Seraphim Rose in my church. So this is exactly his testament as well. So if that's our experience, then we must share it. That's my philosophy. So that's what I want to tell you.
All right. Well, thank you. Community is, Jesus, when Satan is tempting him, says, man does not live by bread alone. But that also isn't to say that bread isn't important, because when the crowd was, far away from a place listening to Jesus on the hillside by Galilee, he multiplied bread for them to eat. And so community, and in that way, sort of community is like bread, where it's something that we need, and it's something that we need for our souls. And it's something that God gives us, and it's something that God can use, but it doesn't mean that it's an exclusive thing that we can. And Jesus says, man does not live by bread alone, but by every word that proceeds from the mouth of God. So, and there's always going to be, in some ways, a hierarchy of churches, things that get better and things that don't, and then there'll be hierarchies for each of us. So, I'll have to check out Rod's book. I knew that he wrote a book on Dante. I haven't read it, but Corey was talking in the chat too. My favorite Rod Dreher is when Rod, it does this a fair amount, when Rod is personal. Everybody has hot takes on what they think is good and bad, and Rod is in some ways like this really open, anxious nerve, because his blog, I read his blog very faithfully. He's anxious about this and he's anxious about that, and he's afraid of this and he's afraid of that, and he's warning about this and warning about that.
But it's hard to read his blog anymore. It's very tough.
It's
don't
very
do
tough
it anymore.
But I love the personal aspect of it from him, where he is very transparent and he does share his life, and he's especially shared, the hard things of his life and the hard things of his family. We, culturally, we can sometimes divinize family. Family is not necessarily divine, and often people's families don't treat them well. People will regularly say things to a family member they wouldn't even dare say to a stranger. So, and Rod's, been very open and very transparent with a lot of those kinds of things. And I think that's been helpful for a lot of people, because if there's one thing people struggle with, it's family.
Oh yeah. I think you'll love that book if that's the case. I haven't read all his books, but I've gone through 4 of them now, and that's definitely the most personal one so far.
Well, then I should probably pick it up and check it out, put it on top of the list. So
that's great.
How do you say your name?
I go with Ray. It's
Ray.
Artist Ray. So
Okay.
It's a problem being Chinese outside China.
Yeah. Well, Ray, I really appreciate you grabbing, hitting on the link and coming on, and it's wonderful to hear your story. And it's, I'm grateful to have at least had a small part in you finding the church and finding a new life. And I hope you drop in again sometime.
I see everything as a prayer. Everything we do, even though I belong to probably the strictest church, there is nothing ecumenical in my realm, and I'm glad it's that way. But at the same time, every time I see, anything or anyone who's pointing up. Of course, I appreciate that. Right?
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you, Ray. Take care. Apparently, I have a dissatisfied customer. Chad is, did I even answer his question about whether the TLC has helped me spiritually? And I thought I answered your question, Chad, because I said, actually, many of the things that have helped me most spiritually have actually been things that I really don't want to revisit, because Christ was most real to me, often in the midst of suffering. Did I deflect with compliments and flattery? It wasn't deflection, Chad. I meant every word that I said. I meant absolutely every word that I said. And as I said earlier with Paul, to sort of quote the Apostle Paul, I look at the Apostle Paul gets to a point in his ministry where he's in prison in Rome, and some of the Mark Parker things that Mark had noted, certain people had abandoned him, certain people weren't visiting him, certain people weren't supporting him, certain people had turned against him. And Paul says in his letter, "You are my letters of recommendation." And so, Chad, in some ways, whether it be a little bit selfish, and I know I can only claim a small amount of influence in your life, but I'd say that, Chad, you are one of the letters of recommendation that I have about how I've been spending my time, and why I think sometimes about YouTube and how I've decided to use YouTube, because I should do something to get a much bigger channel, and I should have a bigger audience, and I should do things that would make me more famous, and there are temptations for that. Not even temptations, there's desire for that. More money's nicer than less money, and more opportunities nicer than less opportunities, but more fame isn't really something very nice. I even look at, Jonathan Peugeot. When Jonathan Peugeot does a conference, he's in some ways just sort of besieged. Everybody wants to talk to him. And I'm really very pleased with what God has given me. And does that count for like spiritual growth? Like I said, the hard things are where we really grow in Christ. And we don't necessarily have to look to revisit those hard things. And there are hard things that I've endured that I very much don't want to visit again. But I've found what this community has done for me. It's been a tremendous blessing. And that's the way I feel. So that is the answer to your question, Chad. So thank you all for spending this time with me. And it's wonderful. What's beautiful is that when I look through this list of comments here, most of you I've spoken with, and some of you I've met in person, and some of you we've been doing this for a long time, and I think it's a beautiful thing. So that being said, a little bit of branding, and then and this piece of poetry, this piece of video work, I don't know anything that I've ever seen, Chad, that is better at summing up a certain thing that a certain generation, your generation, has in terms of thinking about life in this world. And so that's why I play it all the time.
Still I have it. There are moments I conveniently forget that I'm a 40-year-old man. The last vestiges of a ghost long dead. A ghost with a Messiah complex. A Messiah too lazy to rise or ascend. Happily hurt and hard. A hanger-on or haunting of a time past. A heroic dream of the harrowing of hell. failure to launch. Cling to a life vest, treading in spells that linger and last. Mom and Dad, righteous and mad, daydreamers with ghosts of their own. My memory of them stoic, looking with aims to pretend, always on the brink of somewhere, each a child dancing on the fence. On down the river, dreamt in the sunshine, Saturday morning cartoons, the only Sabbath I knew. A disciple of Jim Henson and John Hughes. Worship in cathedrals where the Toys R Us, baptized in ball pits, the clowns served the sacrament we eat. More Pepsi and Pizza Hut. Say please, say cheese. Between Kurt Cobain, a scrambled cable screen, towers tumbling, Super Bowls, and reality TV, the ghost is constitutionally unwilling and intrinsically unable to see and be seen, searching madly for attention to seek. But you could be anything. Never say never. If you've got nothing nice to say, don't say nothing, ever. Don't talk to strangers. See what I say. Just do it. You don't listen very well, do you? You don't do very well, do you? You're not looking too good, are you? Keep up. Appearances aren't what they seem. Will you ever grow up? You look like you're stuck. I think you took too much. Echoes the ghost within the host, who prays the dead bury their dead and stay buried in a fading dream.
Where are you here?
Oh, there I am. Hey.
Where are you? Where?
Got me?
Oh boy. Yeah. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me.
Come on, man.
Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All that long this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Yeah.
Walk with my mama.
You walk with my mama.
Walk with me.
Walk with me too.
You walk with my mama.
Yeah.
Walk with me.
And walk with me too.
Oh, my.
Yeah.
Jesus
journey.
I want Jesus.
Want Jesus.
Walk with me.
Walk with me. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. Hold my hand, Lord. Hold my hand. All along this Jesus journey. Hold my hand, Lord, and hold my hand.
Walk with Moses.
You walk with Moses.
Walk with me.
Walk with me.
You walk with Moses. Walk with me.
Walk with me.
While I'm home.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Jesus journey.
I want Jesus. Jesus, walk with me.
Say, walk with me, Lord. How y'all doing? Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me. I'm on my yeah, I want Jesus. I want Jesus to walk with me. To walk with me. Walk with David, a little shepherd boy. Yeah, you made him a great king. I know David shouted for joy. He walked with David, and he's a little shepherd boy. You made him a great king. And David shouted for joy. That's right. Oh, yeah. So walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. All along this Jesus journey. Walk with me, Lord. Walk with me. You gotta walk with me, Lord.
Yeah! That was rocking great, brother.
Oh, yeah.